the interesting question at this point is, why does it happen in the first place that a sense of self develops? If we maintain that no such self actually exists, then where does it come from? What kind of force is responsible for its development, its conjuring in the human and also animal mental experience or imagination? Where does it come from if it's not factually existent? And this is a very interesting question because, well, we maintain that the living creature is just a bunch of processes. Then how does it conceive itself otherwise? Where does it come from that it goes beyond that and glue these processes together and make a sense of self out of that? Then if we would put that question aside for a while and then look at the transcendence of that sense of self, which is very much, I'd say, what constitutes Nibbana. Now, we have the capacity to imagine the possibility of the transcendence of such sense of self. We actually maintain, we believe that this sense of self is entirely delusional, but that's not enough to transcend it. So it doesn't exist in the first place. It doesn't exist. This sense of self doesn't exist factually. And then we believe that it's just a delusion. And then we have a motivation to transcend it. And yet, despite of all that, it's still difficult to transcend it. So this is avijja. And this is also pointing to the transcendental nature of avijja. It is something that is, we cannot attest, we cannot find a trace of, a factual, a physical trace of, that we can, prove its existence through the study of neuroscience or evolution, examination of evolutionary mechanism and so forth. It's mingled along with these things, and the conditioned living creature, in every way, when you examine their brains and the evolutionary mechanism which brought about their existence and their survival, it so much fits with that delusional sense of self. In a certain sense, you can say that all these evolutionary mechanisms perhaps emanate from that fundamental transcendental delusion that a self must exist. And that's transcendental. We cannot really explain it otherwise. There is presently no way to explain that sense of self scientifically. It's a magical thing. On the other hand comes the transcendence of that sense of self, which is also a totally transcendental experience. What we're talking about here is very much similar to the dualism that we find in many myths and in many religions about the dichotomy, the opposition between good and evil, or Satan and God, and so forth. We have two opposing transcendental forces, both of them transcendental, both of them operating on the human being. The one is so much identified with nature, the other with the capacity to transcend it and the struggle, the effort to go beyond nature. At this point, we are really talking about something that both of which, these two forces, we cannot really attest, we cannot find an evidence for their existence in our physical experience or through physical science. And physical science acknowledges, for example, that the most advanced research in neuroscience is baffled by the experience of self-consciousness, or the experience of that sense of self, is unable to provide an answer as to how it came to exist. And so it's really a transcendental battle, and the mythological and religious stories about the opposition, say, between God and Satan and so forth, this is very much the story similar to what we have between Avijja and Jnana, between darkness, not being able to see that sense of self itself, which blinds the sentient being from seeing the simple truth, and in opposition to that transcendence of that sense, gnosis, being able to see the truth, not just conceptually but also experientially, which will reflect itself in cessation.